Hello, hello.
Hiya, David. How are you?
How you? I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, well, I tell you, this is another amazing global biodiversity festival. Last year
Yeah.
went so well. I think one of the amazing things last year, the most surprising thing, is it ran like clockwork. Thanks to your input and everybody from the front line, it really does have again this sense of energy. It's not just some corporate thing that you can run off and get a cup of tea during. This is a real live session with real live, passionate, dedicated, smart people. It has the same amount of energy, David. So it's really great. Well, you're looking good. I mean, I must say, I'm standing in my office in Geneva, but you're actually in nature. Good man.
I am. I know. Look, if I pan up, look at this magnificent tree that I'm sitting under. It's a very blustery day. I'm in the UK and super excited to be involved again with this incredible group of people. Thank you for organizing this narrative for nature, this cabinet of curiosity that we can all tune into. I'm sitting with my dog out in the park, and I guess it's I think the reflection that I wanted to share just as a sort of I think we've all gone through this year since we last spoke that has been extraordinary in on many levels, and I think if anything, it's given people a lot of time to reflect. I know for myself to look at how blessed I am, and to really think about the life that I've been able to lead so far. Um, and it really got me thinking about, um, you know, how quite naively, I think, for many years, I would tell people I have this lofty title that people give you as an explorer, and I would always laugh because I'd say, I can't do a one-arm push-up, and I like a warm shower and a soft bed, and I love being in a sleeping bag, and I love, being in a tent and being surrounded by nature, and but this lofty title of an explorer, and it really got me thinking of like, well, what does that really mean? Um, and what it means ultimately is that I have been afforded the ultimate luxury and privilege and the dream to be able to go and work and live and communicate the values and the beauty of the natural world through the work that I do. But it is a huge privilege, and it comes, it's very easy to say, go get in nature, go explore, go get outside. And if you start to look at the statistics and you start to look at, the urban environment and how, by mid-century, 70% of us will be living in the urban environment by 2050, and how on average we're spending less than 1 hour a day outside on average. And actually our access to nature is a privilege. And so for me, I think my reflection was, you know, here I am telling people, go get in nature, go get in nature. But it's hard to do, right? It's the perception is often we show photographs of far-flung places, we put out images of what seems inaccessible, and for the majority, it is inaccessible because it's intimidating, because access, because of time, because of resources, because of not maybe having the right equipment or not having the right um, just not coming from the wrong the wrong environment where nature is not seen as something is a hobby, and it's something out there, and it's something that's inaccessible to me. And so I think I had to really reflect and really look at my privilege and say, wow, how lucky I am, and how can I take what I do and what I'm, working on a daily basis and make it more accessible. And so this started a real conversation for me in the last year about how do we rewild ourselves? How do we reconnect to nature, not just as something out there, but really looking at the relationship between our inner well-being and the outer well-being of nature and the interconnectedness, because we know that we are nature. We know that, we're interconnected to that web of life, but we forget, and we push nature into the background, into a screensaver or into a TV show that we can switch on and off. You will pay more for nature, and that you go to the hotel and they'll say, "Hello, sir, would you like the room with the ocean view? It'll be another $100." And you're like, "Oh, that sounds nice." But we won't go out and roll up our trouser legs and get our feet wet. We'll look at it out the window, and then we'll close the window when we don't want to look at it anymore. We look at nature as something outside of us, outside of our everyday. We look at it as something that we can lean upon, or we look at it as something that's just over there. And I think what we've started to see is the impact. As we erode nature, we also erode our inner nature. We erode our well-being. And so I think for me, this connection back to rewilding yourself, and really looking at the mental health relationship between access to nature and making that more equitable, making that fairer, making it that it's not just for you know a sort of a tall white British affluent man who can afford to go off and do it, but it should be available for everybody. And that's a really big mission, I think, that I'm trying to focus on. We will be launching a campaign called Rewild Yourself, which is going to be focusing on exactly this, bringing all walks of life into environments, in the urban environment, not just out there, but in the urban environment, looking at what we've got around us and looking at how that can help to heal, help to create a deeper connection. Because if you can ultimately feel it, then you can start to understand it. If you can understand it, you can start to respect it. And if you can start to respect it, then you definitely want to protect it. And I think that is a mantra as we move into this critical time of conservation that we've all got to start reflecting on, and using the privilege that we have to be able to communicate the voice of nature, to be able to tell her stories, and bring it into as many voices as possible. Because I think that to me has to be the pathway that we all need to look at and take as communicators, to try and make it more equitable and fair, that it's not just a privilege for these explorers, but actually it is something that we can all enjoy and all engage with. So yeah, I think that's really been, I wanted just to share that anecdote and that little story, and think a little bit. And obviously you've been in this world for a very long time. You're an incredible communicator, and I think sometimes I never take it for granted being in nature, but I think you have to look at you have to look at the whole, and realize, how do we make it? And this is why events like this are so important. This is why I love what you guys are doing with the Global Biofest, because it brings together the Global Biodiversity Festival. It brings together all of these voices and all these stories that are out there, but we need them in here. We need them, inside of people's minds and hearts, and we need to get them outside. So maybe call me an old hippie as I'm sitting under the tree. My beard's getting longer by the day, but I think it also comes back to when you really start to look at the state of the planet, and you look at the connection, and you start to think about our oceans. And our oceans are like the cardiovascular system in our body. And so as our oceans start to lose nutrients and they start to slow down, and we start to see stagnation in our ocean in places where the ocean currents are slowing down, we start to see stagnation in our own cardiovascular system. We start to see, more obesity. We start to see people. We start to see the high blood pressure. We start to see all sort of issues happening inside of our body there. As we start to cut down the trees, we start to see obviously pollution increasing. We start to see a relationship between obviously our lungs, because the forests of the world are our lungs, and they're helping to transmit that chemical exchange, giving us the breath that we breathe. But as we lose those trees, we start to see obviously a rise in respiratory disorders and asthmas and allergies. We look at the soil of our land, and as we denature the soil of our land, and we see all the chemicals that we've used now to dump all these toxic phosphates onto the soil to try and keep producing and producing, but we're denaturing it. We're taking out all of its natural microorganisms that it needs to generate the right chemistry to give life on this planet. But we've done that. And then we look at the soil inside of our guts, when we start to see it, the denaturing and all the intestinal disorders that we have. And so what we start to suddenly see is that as we eradicate and start to destroy the natural environment, or continue at this rate we are continuing, we see the same thing replicated in ourselves. And again, this is another one of those, how do we rewild ourselves? And so we have to ask ourselves, when we finally remove you know, the last of those trees, and we finally kill off that's another species. And when those things start disappearing, what part of our human condition starts to be eroded? What part of our inner being starts to disappear? And what do we start to see? You know, the things that we think make us human are being eradicated. So this whole sort of space, I think, is for me a very, very fascinating, and something that I'm working quite hard to try and bring to life through some of these projects that we'll be launching in the coming months.
David, couldn't be better. I mean, you know, we need to bottle that and somehow send it to all of our global leaders. One of the things that I remember, and it seems like a long time ago, was when Richard Louv coined the phrase nature deficit disorder.
Yeah.
And, you know, like everybody, he bought that book, read it, and thought, oh, this is going to be a real step change. People are going to read this, and we're going to see all kinds of changes. And let's face it, it made an impact on people like you and I and everybody watching, but it didn't necessarily change much. And I still think of that when I do quite a bit of work for the Council for Learning Outside the Classroom.
Yeah.
They asked me to help them some years ago. And I don't know about you, David, but firstly, I fell in love with them because these are great people who support learning outside the classroom. But the thing that really made me jump, and I remember saying this to them, is that it says something about our society when we need an organisation called the Council for Learning Outside the Classroom to get decisions made that kids learn outside of a classroom. I think it's amazing. I mean, you can do, as you know,
I mean, you can do mathematics in the field, you know. No, but I mean, it's so I'm highly dyslexic, which is quite funny. And I remember doing it's not funny, but it can be quite funny. And this moment was one of these. I was putting a talk together right around the time that, and I was quoting Richard Louv's book, Last Child in the Woods, and I wrote nature deficit disorder on this slide, and being dyslexic, and the computer being a bit smarter than me, it changed it to nature defiancy disorder. So I was there and I was talking about this nature deficit, and then it said nature defiancy, and I thought, that's interesting. Let's think about that. And that was the start of this real observation for me of like how we extrapolate ourselves from the web of life, how we push it out, we sort of defy it, we sort of, it's like we've got this sort of barrier now between us. And when you really start to look at it, and you start to do the research into how we treat nature, you know, I was amazed that, you know, a third of all visitors to like Yellowstone Park are going there for a scenic drive. They never get out of their car. So we love to frame nature through the car window, right? So we're going for a scenic drive, or we're told stay on the path, don't be curious. And again, I mean, what you were just saying, a similar thing when I was very fortunate to do a talk with Janine Benyus. And I was sitting there with Janine and we were chatting, and she was talking about biomimicry. And I said, please don't take this the wrong way, but isn't it funny that we actually revere you for looking at nature and telling us that we can, please don't take it the wrong way, but it's kind of shows you how far away from, you know, reality we've got, because we're like, oh, here's someone who's telling us that we can learn from nature. And we're all so in awe of it. And it is magical. I'm not belittling that, you know, I think it's one of, you know, Ask Nature is one of the, you know, if you've been there recently, go check out Ask Nature, one of the most incredible sites, incredible innovation, but it does show you how disconnected we are. This then translates into, you know, this sort of what I would call maybe some of these evolutionary markers that stop us from actually maybe protecting the things that we should worry, you know, we should be protecting, we should worry that we're losing. So in other words, we are living with this sort of outdated brain model. So we're more afraid of being in the woods and the darkness than we are obviously losing the woods. We're more afraid of being eaten by a shark than we are losing the entire species. So it's quite hard for us to comprehend how to feel it and protect it, and how to nurture it, and how to you know, engage with it if our only touch points or our only narratives that we see of nature are ones that are often, you know, about the negative sides of nature. So if you look at things like, you know, and it's it, but you know, the National Geographic programming or Discovery, and you see that you know, Shark Week becomes Shark Month, and Shark Month becomes Shark Year, and it's always when animals attack or animals do something, or how fast can they run, and how they're going to eat a human. And it's always when nature attacks us. It's always man versus nature, you know. It's you know, we've had these programs, you know, Bear Grylls and all these, man versus nature. And it's like, why can't it just be man with nature, man learning from nature, man working with nature? You know, it's always this sort of emphasis, but we love to create drama, you know, out of this programming that again removes us. So, you know, we have this very dramatic music, and we have eagles swooping and picking up something, and you know, and someone spent 7 years trying to get that shot, and then people go to the park and they're like, "Where's my eagle? I want to see an eagle picking up," because nature sucks. It's really boring. I'm going to go back and watch it on TV. It's much more interesting. So we sort of defy it again, and we ignore the small things and the brilliance and that, you know, which is obviously the kind of conversations that you're brilliantly showing here, which is you bring it to life. You know, you bring the natural world through all of these speakers, all of these stories to life. And I think this is the thing, we've got to look at its brilliance, its ingenuity, its complexity. While it seems overwhelming, it's what makes this planet so unique. It's why we don't need to go to Mars. I mean, I love everyone who's off to Mars, and don't get me wrong, innovation is great, but like, it's all here. This planet is extraordinary. We need to feel it, respect it. We need to create, you know, not just, you know, access and make it more equitable and fair. We also have to look at nature as a partner, as an equal, you know. And this is another area through the rewilding program where we're really pushing this here is what I would call the rights of nature. And so the idea that a tree should have the same rights to breathe as you and me, right? The tree should have the same rights not to be attacked and have its limbs chopped off, you know. So we're looking at the legal rights, and again, if you're interested in this space, the Earth Law Center, which is a great institution, really good people working on how rivers have the right to flow, right? How a fish has the same rights as you and me to live in a stream that's not polluted with plastic, or not polluted by toxic chemicals that we think we can indiscriminately dump down the river, killing and taking away life, and then get a little fine for it because it's irreplaceable. You know, we've got to stop playing this sort of death Jenga, as I call it, with nature. Every block in that game is a species, and we are one of those blocks. And every time we pull another block out and get rid of it and kill it, the system gets wobblier and wobblier and wobblier, and at some point it will collapse. So all of these things are interconnected, and I think that was my main, you know, as I sat, you know, like most of us, locked down, when nature's taken away, you know, and I realized how important that was to me, but also how it isn't fair. It hasn't been given. It hasn't. The environment that we present of nature often is so extreme, so out there, so sort of. It's a fire. It's a mega storm. It's something, you know, that makes us defy even more and go, oh God, it's scary, and I don't want to be there. And actually, just sitting under a tree now, sucking in this incredible this incredible, you know, storyteller that's sitting here, and I'm sitting under that. I can breathe in all these, you know, breaths of oxygen thanks to this tree and everything else. But really, that, you know, we have to be so grateful for not just pushing it to the background, but for this incredible planet that we live on. So that's my Friday morning, 9:30, you know, and I haven't even had a drink yet. Maybe, you know, my coffee's too good.
This couldn't be better. So many important messages. And for I've made a note of the websites and the rewilding project coming up and all the rest of it, which will pop up later so that everyone can find them and see them. David, we're out of time. We're going to leave you with your great tree, but thank you for bringing it to life. And your messages are exactly what we needed, because we just had the finance group, and what a terrific group, you know, connecting global economies with every single nature observation we make. We've had you with your terrific impact that you're making. And of course, one day, it won't be long, you and I will be on the same expedition together. Let's just do that.
Let's do it.